Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to learn the basics of actors in Swift language. Actors is a new feature that was introduced for the Swift language, and it allows us to safely run concurrent code. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example. Let's say that we have a class called counter. It's a very simple class. And this particular class has only one particular function, which is called increment. This example is taken from WWDC. Also, the counter has a var value, which will be integer 0. And we will simply go ahead and increment that particular counter. And now we can go ahead and return it. So you can see it's not much going on. We're simply incrementing the counter and returning the value. Now what's going to happen if I go ahead and create a button over here, and I will say increment. One of the things you might be wondering about is, why am I using a SwiftUI application? Why not use playgrounds? Unfortunately, playgrounds at the time of this video are not really working well with actors. Okay, so what should we do in this case? Well, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and create an instance of the counter if we want to increment the counter. And next up, we can call the counter.increment function, which is going to increment the counter and also return the value. So if I go ahead and call this multiple times, like 2 times, and run this, you know that this is going to return you 1 and this is going to return you 2. Let's go ahead and run this. And I'm using the actual simulator so I can at least see this printed out on the output window. Let's go ahead and see if it's running. Okay, we're trying to run at least. Since this is the first time we're running it, that's why it's taking a little bit of time to run, but hopefully in the future times it's going to be a little bit faster. So once the application is running, which we're still waiting for it, when we click on the button, which is called increment, we should be able to see the updated value of the counter. So you can see 1 and 2 because we call increment 2 times. So it looks like it's working perfectly fine under the conditions that we have. Now let's go ahead and make things interesting by adding a dispatch queue, and we will run concurrent operations. So we're going to try to update or call the increment counter again, but in this time we are going to call it concurrently, meaning at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and call counter.increment, and I'm just going to go ahead and print out the values. Now this is going to create 100 iterations of concurrent task and then call counter.increment. So we need to see, or we might be hoping that it will just print out 1 till like 100 in that sequence. If I go ahead and run this application right now and click on the increment button, you can see it does print out a lot of values, possibly 100 values, but it's all out of sequence. 1, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and then 3. So what exactly is going on? Why is it not printing out the values one by one? And the reason is that we are performing the increment action or counter.increment function concurrently. So they're kind of like starting close to at the start at the same time or one after the other, but we don't know which one is going to come back first. So it might be possible that the first task that was running came back, and then the 17th task was able to come back. So the value was actually 17 at that time, then 18, then. So we don't really know at what point those tasks are actually coming back or being returned. Since they are run concurrently, if we are running 100 tasks concurrently, we don't know which one is going to get back to us first. Is it going to be the first one or 31st one or 100th one? We don't know. And that is exactly the problem we are facing. Basically, we are trying to change a mutable state because this is a class and this is all mutable, shared mutable state, and everyone is trying to increment it at the same exact time. So we are getting into this weird place that all of these numbers are out of order. Now, one way to avoid this problem is to just not use a shared mutable state. So how can we change this to use not shared mutable state? Well, we can simply go ahead and add a struct to it. Structs are not really shared because they are value types, so they're copied. If we're using structs, then we also need to use mutating, since we are in the inside increment function, we are changing the value of one of the properties of the struct. Now we have another problem, because right over here we are saying it let, and then we are trying to call increment, which actually changes the structure values. So we will also go ahead and change that. Now, just by changing it to a counter as a struct is not really going to solve your problems. If I go ahead and run this again, I'm going to get similar kind of a result. They're all out of sequence. In order to do that, what we need to do is we perhaps need to make a copy. So I'm going to go ahead and create a local copy of the counter. So every time we're running a counter, we get a copy. And then on the copy, we call increment. Since we are using or creating a copy and not really calling anything on it, we can perhaps change this to let. So every time the iteration is going to run, we're taking the counter, since it's a struct type, and we're going to make a copy of the counter and then call increment. Can you guess what's going to happen if I run this? Let's go ahead and run this. Well, since everyone was creating a brand new copy of the counter, the only time the counter got incremented was just 1, because when you create a copy, you get a copy of the counter where the value was initialized to be 0, but now we no longer have shared mutable state because, well, everyone is having their own copy and all the copies are initialized by 0 and then eventually change to 1 when we call the increment function. So although we didn't really run into the issues that we were running into before, but this doesn't really satisfy what we were trying to do. So now let's go ahead and see that how we can use Swift actors to solve this problem. I'm going to go ahead and decorate this with actor. Yes, actor is a keyword just like a struct or a class, and the main purpose of actor is to make sure that you are accessing the values, the functions, the properties in isolation, meaning one at a time. Since this is the actor, it doesn't really need the mutating type. It's a reference type. So you don't really need mutating over there. Now, if I go ahead and try to build this application, we get quite a bit of errors. Let's go ahead and first change this counter. We don't really need that part, so let's go ahead and remove that. The other part that we are having issue is with the increment function. So basically it is saying that in the increment function, you're calling it outside, which is over here, and we need to make sure that one person and only one person is able to call that function, not everyone. So it looks like you're trying to call something that is actor isolated, meaning that this particular function increment, if you are trying to call it from the outside of the actor, which we are, then you have to make sure that you are not calling it without isolation. So in other words, you have to make sure that only one person can call, or one task can enter or call the increment function. Well, how do we make sure of that? If you go ahead and call counter.increment, one of the things that you will notice is the function increment automatically becomes an async function. So all the different functions that are inside the actor are automatically isolated async functions. So in order to call that function, I do need to use await. Now, if I'm using await, I can't really just use an await without async. So I need to create a context for async. So now we are inside the async context, and now we are calling increment. And inside this context, whenever it calls the counter.increment, since there's the await over here, it's going to suspend the task if the task needs to be suspended during that time, and return the control, and then go to the next one, suspend the task in that order. So let's go ahead and run this and see if that makes any difference. As you can see, that now you get all the numbers in a particular or correct sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, so on till 100. So all the tasks that you created, the concurrent tasks of 100 of them, you were able to suspend those tasks in that order, preserve the order, and then return the result in that particular order. So there was no race condition where two different tasks were trying to modify a particular value. And that's the whole point of using actors. Only one particular task can go and increment a value at a particular time. And the other tasks will have to wait their turn. Once the first task is done, it is resumed from suspension, and then the other task can jump in and increment the value again, but on their own and without causing a race condition. So this is the main point of using actors. And this particular lecture is also covered in my upcoming course, which will be available soon, which is about the concurrency in Swift using async and await and also actors. So I really hope that you have enjoyed these videos and it has clarified a little bit about the concept of why you should use actor and in which scenarios you will start using actors. If you like this video and want to support my channel, then the best way would be to become a patron. You can simply go to patreon.com/AzamSharp. The link is right there in the YouTube description. And you can see that you can sign up for the silver tier or the gold tier. Your donations are very, very helpful, and they will allow me to create more videos, more courses, and share knowledge. As you can understand, each video takes enormous amount of time to create, edit, and publish. Also, if you're interested, you can check out my Udemy courses. The links for all the courses is right there in the YouTube description. I have a lot of courses on SwiftUI, RxSwift, core data, MVVM design, even GraphQL, Combine Framework, ARKit, and SwiftUI with Firebase. A lot of other courses, as you can see. So definitely check out my courses and please use the links in the description. Thank you so much. Hope you have enjoyed this video.